Greetings, this is a reading of the book The Airship Golden Hind. Some of the language in this book has not aged well and is indeed no longer politically correct. Take caution when listening to this visual audiobook. Footage and photography are provided by Photations. At Photations, we believe that the world would be a better place if people spent their time being creative. Join us in practicing art so we all can be the master of art. Find art prints available at our store www.photationsstore.com. Keep our artwork alive by making a donation at photationsdonations.com. The Airship Golden Hind by Percy F. Westerman. Chapter 13 The Tale of a Cyclone. And if I like the look of things one little bit, declared Fosterdike frankly. Glass dropping as quickly as if the bottom of it had fallen out, and on top of it all we get this. This was a wireless from Point de Galle announcing that a terrific cyclone was raging west of the Maldive Islands, its path being a right-hand circle. That meant that unless the Golden Hind made a radical alteration, of course, she would encounter the full force of the wind. It was the fourth day of the race. The Golden Hind had passed over Socotra at daybreak and was on her way across the Arabian Sea, her next scheduled landing place being Colombo. If we carry on, we'll hit the tail of the cyclone, said Kenyon, consulting a chart of the Indian Ocean. Yes, though what is worse, we'd pass through the dangerous storm center, and then more than likely get a nose-ender on the other side if we were lucky enough to weather the center, replied Fosterdike. It's too jolly risky, Kenyon. At 15,000 feet, it may be as bad or worse than at 500 feet up. Call up Murgatroyd and ask what petrol there is in the tanks. Kenneth went to the voice tube and made the necessary inquiry of the engineer. By Jove, we'll risk it, declared Fosterdike. When he received the desired information, we'll go south a bit and then make straight for Fremantle. Kenyon was taken aback with the audacity of the proposal. The distance between Socotra and Western Australia was a good 5,000 miles, or 36 hours of uninterrupted flight at 140 miles an hour. There was sufficient fuel on board for 40 hours, which meant a reserve of 4 hours only in case of anything occurring to protract the run. Oh, we'll do it, said Fosterdike confidently, as he noticed his companion's look of blank amazement. Better run the risk of cutting things fine than to barge into a cyclone. Southeast by south is the course. Remarkable thing we haven't heard anything of friend since the clocking, and observed Kenyon. Wonder where he's making for. We'll hear in due course, replied the baronet. He crossed the cabin to consult a Mercator's chart of the world, on which were pinned British, American, and Japanese flags recording the latest known positions of the rival airmen. There was a German flag ready to be stuck in, but nearly 5 days had elapsed since von Sinzig left Spain, and the crew of the Golden Hind were still in ignorance of his whereabouts. But they had the satisfaction of knowing that they more than held their own with the others, the American, and passed the Azores, while Count Hieshi's Banzai, which had made a stupendous non-stop flight to Honolulu, had developed engine defects that promised to detain him indefinitely. 2,000 miles in 9 hours, remarked Fosterdike, referring to the Japanese airplane's performance. Some shifting that, but Count Hieshi has evidently gone the pace a bit too thick. He's our most dangerous rival, Kenyon. Unless von Sinzig has something up his sleeve, sir, added Kenneth. trust him for that," said the baronet grimly. "However, time will prove well. Carry on, Kenyon. Call me if there's any great change in the weather." Within the next 2 hours, there were indications that even the new course taken by the Golden Hind would not allow her to escape the cyclone. Right ahead, the hitherto cloudless sky was heavy with dark, red thunder clouds that, extending north and south as far as the eye could see, threatened to close upon the airship like the horns of a Zulu impi. Aroused from his sleep, Fosterdike lost no time in making his way to the navigation room. Although he was not to be on duties for another hour and a half, Peter Bramston had also hurried to the chart room. "We're in for it," Sir declared Kenna. "We are agreed, Fosterdike. Gravely, evidently there is a second disturbance. Like judging from appearances, it's none the less formidable. No use turning till we'll go up another 5,000 feet and see what it looks like." The Golden Hind rose rapidly under the joint action of her 6 planes and the addition of Brodium to the ballonets. But even then it was touch and go whether the gathering storm would encircle her, as it was she flew within the influence of the fringe of the cyclone. Shrieking winds assailed her, seeming to come from 2 opposing quarters. Her huge bulk lurched and staggered as she climbed. Her fuselage seesawed as the blast struck the enormous envelope above, while the jar upon the tension wires was plainly felt by the crew. For a full 10 minutes it was as black as night, save when the dark masses of cloud were riven by vivid flashes of lightning. Blinded by the almost incessant glare, Fosterdike and his companions could do little or nothing but hang on, trusting that the Golden Hind would steer herself through the opaque masses of vapor. It was impossible to consult the instruments whether the airship was rising or falling. Whether she was steering north, south, east, or west remained questions that were incapable of being solved, since the blinding flashes of lightning and the deafening peals of thunder literally deprived the occupants of the navigation room of every sense save that of touch. All they could do was to hold on tightly, clench their teeth, and wait. It required some holding on. At one moment, the longitudinal axis of the airship was inclined at an angle of 45 degrees. At another, she was heeling to almost the same angle, the while twisting and writhing like a trapped animal now, and again she seemed to be enveloped in electric fluid. Dazzling flashes of blue flame played on and along the aluminium envelope. Vicious tongues of forked lightning seemed to stab the gas bag through, and doubtless had the ballonets contained hydrogen instead of non-inflammable brodium, the Golden Hind would have crashed swords and trailing masses of flame. How long this inferno lasted no one on board had the remotest idea. The flight of time remained a matter of individual calculation. To Kenyon it seemed hours. Bramson afterward confessed that he thought the passage through the storm cloud lasted 30 minutes. In reality, only 6 minutes had elapsed from the time the Golden Hind was enveloped in the thunder cloud till the moment when she emerged. It was much like being in a train coming out of a long tunnel. With their eyes still dazed by the vivid flashes, the men in the navigation room became aware that the vapor was growing lighter. They could distinguish the smoke like rolls of mist as the sunshine penetrated the upper edges of the clouds. Then, no longer beaten by the torrential downpour of hail, the Golden Hind shot into a blaze of brilliant sunshine. It seemed too good to be true for some moments. Fosterdike and his companions simply stared blankly ahead until their eyes grew accustomed to the different conditions. Then Kenyon, who was still officer of the watch, glanced over the shoulder of the helmsman and noted the compass. The lubber's line was a point west of north. The Golden Hind had been practically retracing her course, and might be anything from 50 to 100 miles farther away from her goal than she had been when the storm enveloped her. Obedient to the action of the vertical rudders, the airship swung back on her former course. The altimeter indicated a height of 12,000 feet, and the Golden Hind was still rising 3,000 feet below was an expanse of wind-torn clouds, no longer showing dark, but of a dazzling whiteness. The crew of the Golden Hind were literally looking on the bright side of things. "We're well above the path of the storm," remarked Fosterdike. "Gratefully, we've a lot to be thankful for, but the fact remains, we daren't descend while that stuff's knocking about. Once in a lifetime is quite enough." Before any of his companions could offer any remark, Murgatroyd, the chief air mechanic on duty, appeared through the hatchway. "Sorry to have to report, sir," he announced, "that the two aftermotors are both out of action. Blades smashed on the starboard prop, sir, and the chain dry on the port prop has snapped. The broken chain is in your cabin, sir." "Who put it there?" asked Fosterdike. "It put itself there, sir," was the imperturbable reply. "Sort of flew off the sprocket when the link parted and went bang through the side plate of the fuselage, sir. I'll allow it's made a wee bit of a mess inside, sir." "Take over Branson, please," said Fosterdike. "Directly you get a chance. Obtain our position. Come on, Kenyon. Let's see the extent of the damage." "The cabin doesn't matter. It isn't the first time I've slept in a punctured dog box. But the mechanical breakdown, that's the thing that counts." Followed by Murgatroyd, the baronet and Kenyon went aft from No. 5 motor room. They could see the motionless propeller, one of the 4 blades of which had been shattered as far as the boss, while all the others bore signs of more or less damage from the flying fragments. "Matter of 20 minutes, sir," replied Murgatroyd in answer to his chief's inquiry as to how long the repairs would take. "We'll have to stop and outbolt on the new blades. At the same time, I'll put a couple of hands on to fitting a new chain to the starboard drive. I don't fancy the bracket strained, but I'll soon find out directly we stop." It was rough luck to have to stop all the motors and drift at the mercy of the air currents for 20 precious minutes. But the only option would be to carry on under the action of 4 propellers, only at a greatly reduced speed. "Right, oh," Murgatroyd agreed. The baronet slapped it about. "Trust me for that, sir," replied the engineer. "I've warned the breakdown gang. I'll give you the all-clear signal in 20 minutes less, sir, or my name isn't Robert Murgatroyd." 3 minutes later, the remaining 4 motors were switched off, and the Golden Hind, rapidly losing way, fell off broadside on to the wind at a height of 12,500 feet above sea level. Instantly, the mechanics swarmed out along the slender A brackets, Murgatroyd and an assistant setting to work to unbolt the damaged blades, while other airmen passed a new chain round the sprocket wheels of the starboard motor and propeller respectively. Although there was no apparent wind, and the airship was drifting at practically the same rate as the air current, it was bitterly cold. The brackets were slippery with ice, and the difficulty of maintaining a foothold was still further increased by the erratic vertical motion of the airship. The mechanics, wearing lifelines, went about their work fearlessly. They were used to clambering about on coastal airships, sometimes under fire. And although the present task was a simple one from a mechanical point, it was most difficult owing to the adverse atmospheric conditions. Yet in the space of 17.5 minutes, Murgatroyd and his band of workers were back in the fuselage, their task accomplished, and in 20 minutes the 6 motors were running once more. Murgatroyd flushed with pleasure when his chief thanked and complimented him. "Maybe, sir, you'd be liking to have your cabin repaired?" he asked. "Just a sheet of metal strapped against the plates will hold till we land again. Then I'll see that it's well bolted on, sir. But I'll guarantee you'll not be feeling the draft tonight."